Right. Well, let's talk about the Brazilian. You fans of the Brazilian lads?
Oh yes.
Good. Good. Well, we've got a whole segment on that. Let's start off with this quote from Frank Zappa, which I brought.
Musical legend, by the way.
Yes. Well, I'm not so familiar with his musical prowess, but this quote is something I brought up in a number of podcasts because it's just so on the money. The illusion of freedom will continue as long as it's profitable to continue that illusion. At the point where the illusion becomes too expensive to maintain, they will just take down the scenery, they will pull back the curtains, and they will move the tables and chairs out of the way, and you will see the brick wall at the back of a theatre.
Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I just want to direct your attention to the aesthetics range of merch that we have on the store. These are beautiful images that I think work really well as posters or mugs. So if you want to support us, going over to the merch store at shop.lotus.com is easily the best way other than signing up on the website.
Yeah, exactly right. The reason I mentioned that will become apparent as we start talking about Darth Moraz or whatever.
That is it Morales? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
so
he
this is
looks
a local,
very evil.
This is a wizard.
No, this is actually a Brazilian Supreme Court Justice,
Supreme Emperor of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that for those who are listening, he's basically dressed as Darth Vader but without the helmet. In fact, that bit of whatever it is, Return of the Jedi, when you see him with his helmet off and he's got that sort of warped, bald head, it's very fitting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, presumably that's what Supreme Court justices in Brazil wear, I would imagine.
That's just him. Everyone else is wearing normal clothes.
He's even got the Darth Vader cape as well. That's the wonderful thing. I bet he listens to, the Imperial March when he's doing his.
And the other thing I was a bit confused about with this, sorry, I am getting to the point, dear listener. But the other thing I was a bit confused about with this is why is his cape sort of billowing up like that? I mean, is he trying to recreate the Marilyn Monroe scene where he's standing over a subway grill as it all flares up? Or the other thing that occurred to me on this is maybe because he's got that lovely big cape, every so often when he's walking along, or maybe every time he enters a room, he just pulls off a tight little pirouette to send it all billowing out like that. Maybe that's a thing.
He's really into ballet.
Anyway, so that's a long way of saying I can't pronounce his name, but Alexander D. Moraz or whatever it is. Moraes, yes. So he is the villain of this piece. There's his Wikipedia entry, which I won't I won't put too much stock in because of course it is Wikipedia. But
Alexandra, not even Alexander.
Oh yes, it is. Good point. But
began wizarding school in 1990, graduated in 1995, right?
He's now a grand wizard.
Yeah. Well, the point of referring to Wikipedia though is it's not generally biased to the right.
Yes.
So it can be useful if you're looking up a left wing character. So I'll just mention some of the key points from here that I've sort of picked out from this. So this Alexander G. Moraes, is it?
I presume so.
I'm going to go with Moraes. Is currently serving as the president of the Superior Electoral Court and as a justice of the Supreme Federal Court. His presidency of the Supreme Court came into issue during the 2022 Brazilian election, making him the target of allegations and criticisms by former President Bolsonaro and his supporters. Now, that election will be coming up a couple of times in this segment. I just want to make it absolutely clear that Brazilian election was won fair and square, 100%. And we know that this is true because YouTube will remove our channel if we say anything other. So, they only censor things that are untrue.
Mm-hmm. I tend to regard the YouTube content guidelines as, a fountain of truth.
Yes, it is. It is the highest form of truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hail YouTube.
Yeah, yes, absolutely right. I mean, and why would they ever censor something if it wasn't true? I mean, they got all the stuff over the
everything else, right?
Yeah, the 2-year period from a short while ago. They got all of that 100% right. So they've got this right as well. Anyway, so he was a member of the Brazilian Social Democrat Party. He was appointed the Secretary of Public Security in São Paulo. His management was somewhat controversial, because one out of every 4 homicides in that city was committed by the police. Which is
For a second, I thought you were going to say committed by him.
no. Well,
1 in 4 of all homicides. He's a busy man.
I suppose he was an officer of the law, so I suppose it's possible. It didn't subclassify, so
Casting spells.
maybe he just swoops down in his cape and drains the blood. I don't know. Morass has been involved in several corruption-related scandals. He was suspected of receiving $4 million from a company that was part of the nation's largest graft scheme being investigated by federal police. Despite several corruption allegations, Morass was nominated Minister of the Supreme Court in 2017, succeeding Minister, Tori Zavatsky, who was killed in a plane crash while overseeing the investigations of politicians linked to the nation's largest graft scheme.
You know how planes are; they're just so inevitably unreliable, aren't they? You know, if you get in a plane, you're gambling with your life. It's not like they're generally safer than, say, any other mode of transport.
I always find it curious how many really incredibly convenient plane crashes there are in South America every time. You know, some politician or judge looks into the wrong thing. But in this case, even the left-wing Wikipedia was pointing out that he was suspected of receiving all of this money, and then the guy who's looking into it just happens to have an unfortunate plane crash, and he then gets his job. And obviously, the investigation was somewhat hampered. But I'm sure that's just coincidence.
I'm sure he's just a very lucky man.
In 2020, part of that same inquiry, federal police launched an operation probing businessmen, bloggers, and politicians who just so happened to also be aligned with Bolsonaro. Yeah, it's funny how that lines up. In 2022, Morass, and I appreciate I'm getting his name wrong, but
Brazilian Morass.
Bear with me.
Interesting.
Yes. In 2022, Morass ordered the suspension of the messaging app Telegram because they weren't blocking accounts which were spreading disinformation.
You know, disinformation, that's
I would assume,
terrible blight on this world.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I assume that he is the one who determines what disinformation is.
Of course, I mean, he's infallible. He's not even scarcely even human. He's so good at his job of discerning truth from fiction.
Very possibly true, actually. And in October 2022, the Supreme Court gave Morass the unilateral authority to order the removal of online content as part of an effort to combat further disinformation. And apparently, according to left-wing Wikipedia, Bolsonaro supporters and legal experts have criticised the move, fearing that it might just possibly be allowing a censorship regime in. So anyway, we've got a bit of an update on that one. So the other thing, of course, is that he was heavily involved in that 2022 Brazilian election, which, as we know, was 100%. Completely and utterly legitimate. Some people have said there was issues with voting machines and all that sort of stuff, but no, I discount those entirely because I would like us to continue to have a channel. There was also rumors of draconian laws being pushed through in favor of bribes. So
anyway. Corruption is not a problem in South America. It's never been a problem and never will be.
No, certainly not. Well, actually, no. I think we can say it for all the other ones. Just for some reason, the Brazilian election is.
Well, I just mean corruption more generally, as a sort of culture that it's just simply not present.
Yes, but not in Brazil. Not in Brazil. No. Some people say, incorrectly, of course, that Brazil is going through a rather dictatorial process, disguised as a democracy. That social networks are being routinely censored. Opposition political parties are getting their mandates revoked, banned from running in elections, and some have even been arrested, all largely on this chap's orders.
I don't think that's just Brazil. That's a decent amount of the world are going through that questionable phase, aren't they?
Some would say yes, but because of this chap, and I'm getting his name wrong again, but Darth Morass or whatever his name is, he wanted to use Twitter to censor his opponents, and that's caused a bit of a drama lately. he wanted to go after certain, sitting members of Brazil's Congress and journalists and other political opponents, including I don't know if this means anything, but apparently they're big names in Brazil: Carla Zambelli and Marcel van Hattem. So if you are Brazilian and those names mean anything to you, then that's that. So anyway, to give a quick recap on this situation, we've got this long post here from Michael Schellenberger, but helpfully he includes a video which I will quickly play because it's sort of useful to our case here. So let's hear what's been going on in Brazil.
Hey everyone, it's Mike Schellenberger, and I'm reporting to you at this moment from Brazil, where a dramatic series of events are underway. At 5:52 p.m. Eastern Time today, April 6, 2024, X Corporation, formerly known as Twitter, announced that a Brazilian court had forced it to, quote, block certain popular accounts in Brazil. Then, less than 1 hour later, the owner of X, Elon Musk, announced that X would defy the court's order and lift all restrictions. As a result, said Musk, we will probably lose all revenue in Brazil and have to shut down our office there. But principles matter more than profit, he added. At any moment, Brazil's Supreme Court could shut off all access to X Twitter for the people of Brazil. It is not an exaggeration to say that Brazil is on the brink of dictatorship at the hands of a totalitarian Supreme Court justice named Alexandre de Moraes. President Lula da Silva is also participating in this push towards totalitarianism. Since taking office, Lula has massively increased government funding of the mainstream corporate news media, most of which are encouraging increased censorship. What Lula and de Moraes are doing is an outrageous violation of Brazil's constitution as well as the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. At this moment, Brazil is not yet a dictatorship. It still has elections, and the Brazilian people have other means at their disposal to confront authoritarianism. At the same time, the Federal Supreme Court and the Superior Electoral Court, which it controls, are directly interfering in those elections through censorship. 3 days ago, I arrived in Brazil and published the Twitter files for Brazil. They show that de Moraes has violated the Brazilian constitution in multiple ways. He illegally demanded that Twitter reveal private information about Twitter users who used hashtags that he considered inappropriate. He demanded access to Twitter's internal data, violating the platform's policy. He censored on his own initiative without any respect for due process posts on Twitter by parliamentarians from the Brazilian Congress. And Moraes tried to turn Twitter's content moderation policies into a weapon against supporters of then-President Jair Bolsonaro. I say all of this as an independent and nonpartisan journalist. I'm not a fan of either Bolsonaro or Trump. My own political views are very moderate, but I know censorship when I see it. The Twitter files revealed also that Google, Facebook, Uber, WhatsApp, and Instagram betrayed the people of Brazil. If this evidence is proven and admitted to, the executives of those companies behave like cowards. They provided the Brazilian government with personal registration data and telephone numbers without a court order. Therefore, they violated the Brazilian laws. When Twitter refused, to their credit, to provide Brazilian authorities with private user information, including direct messages, the government of Brazil attempted to sue and hold Brazil's top Twitter attorney in criminal contempt. When I was in Brazil in 1992, at the time, the slogan of the Workers' Party was "Without fear of being happy." In recent days, I've spoken to dozens of Brazilians, including professors, journalists, and respected lawyers. All of them told me that they are shocked by what is happening here. They told me that they themselves are afraid to speak their mind, and that the Lula government, the Workers' Party government, is complicit in creating this climate of fear. Look, Brazil belongs to the Brazilians. It's not my country, such there's limits to what I'm capable of doing. But what I can say is that there are many Brazilians who do not feel safe saying what must be said. Alexandre de Moraes is a tyrant, and the only way to deal with tyrants is to confront them. It's up to Brazil's senators now to confront this tyrant, and it's up to the people of Brazil to demand that their senators do so. In 1992, my best Brazilian friend gave me a t-shirt that I loved. On it was a cartoon of Brazil's military dictators who had painted the sky black. Beside them were children who were smiling and throwing stars up into the dark sky. It said they painted the sky black, but we brought back the stars. Alexandre de Moraes and Lula are painting the sky black. The time has come for the Brazilian people to let the light.
So I picked that out because that is, one of a number of sort of growing examples of how this guy is going a little bit off the rails at this point. Rather sort of happily banning people using his power to the utmost extent. I give you a sort of out of context example. My old man, early on in his career, was a police officer. One of the things he told me is that, and I found this quite interesting. I don't know if this is still the case, but if there was ever a traffic accident involving a police car and a civilian, regardless of circumstances, the police would always accept liability. So even if the police car would say stopped at a roundabout and somebody just came and hit them from behind, they would always accept liability. And the reason they did that is because they felt it was so important to not just be impartial and fair. They wanted to be seen to be impartial and fair. They didn't want any accusation that they were not acting in a impartial and fair and judicious manner. What happens when a state just decides, you know what, sod this, we're just gonna use the full extent of our powers and we just don't care to crush our opposition?
This?
Well, yes.
It's not exactly a long-lived strategy, because people who do that, their time in power all of a sudden has a clock ticking. You don't know what that time is, but
well, the point is once you start going down that road, and we're not saying this happened in Brazil because it definitely didn't. But if you start, rigging elections, and doing other naughty things and and weaponizing the political process, the legal process to go after your political opponents, which also has never happened in the United States. Or are we allowed to say that now?
We're allowed to say that.
Oh, okay. Which has definitely happened in the United States recently. Basically, once you cross that line, you can't you can't let yourself lose an election again. That line has been crossed. So obviously, look, this guy was going after, as Glenn Greenwald. Was it Glenn Greenwald there?
Michael Schellenberger.
Oh, Michael Schellenberger. Yeah. So as Michael Schellenberger was saying that, the Supreme Court was reaching out and saying, censor our opponents, stop these people from talking because they want to be the final arbiters of the truth. What I found even more disturbing was this next bit when Elon was talking about, let's go into this, about the way that they wanted it to be done. How do I?
Demands from this Judge Alexander. That's his name on Twitter, at Alexander. And there would be to suspend accounts immediately. We're given typically 2 hours to suspend an account or face massive fines. And the final straw is we were being given demands to suspend sitting members of the parliament and major journalists. And moreover, we could not tell them that this was at the behest of Alexander Morales. We had to pretend that it was due to our rules of service. And that was the final straw, and we said no.
That's dark.
Demands from
It shouldn't have even got that far, really. If the government asks you to censor people, you should be like, no. If it truly is the platform of free speech as Elon touts it, surely you shouldn't even consider it.
We know this has already happened before
Yes.
Elon. We got the Twitter files for the United States, and it is the case. The United States government, specifically Biden's regime, decided that they were going to demand that a series of people would be banned from Twitter and everywhere else, and they had to pretend it was because of terms of service, but it was nothing to do with the terms of service. It was just because the Biden government didn't like them.
I look back on now. Do you remember that? Was it a Joe Rogan interview where it was Jack Dorsey, that something Varsi woman, his head of trust.
I know the one you're
This
about,
India,
yeah.
The political officer, basically, for Twitter.
What was that? Sorry, John?
Vijaya.
Oh,
Be careful how you say
JJ.
this one.
Okay, the JJ and Tim Pool. And I remember looking at the time thinking, and it was weird. I mean, Jack's behavior in that was kind of weird. And a lot of people were saying that he felt like he was trapped or something like that. That he was part of this organization that had got away from him. And I suppose in light of current events, it probably wasn't the organization itself that got away from him. It was three-letter agencies. And the American legal system was saying, no, you have to do this and you have to pretend that it's your decision.
Well, when he resigned as Twitter CEO or whatever it was, when Elon took over, or I can't remember exactly the timings of everything, but basically he seemed to be very repentant. And he's just like, yeah, we made a lot of mistakes and I kind of regret how many people we censored. You could argue that he was just trying to save his skin because he'd become so unpopular, but I think that there was a certain amount of genuine repentance there.
Yeah, I think that probably is the case, that he regrets some of the things. It would have been nice if he was being lent on by governmental forces to make him do those things, because Twitter was awful. It was really, before Elon bought it. It was just. I mean, I had an account, but I didn't use it much because I just thought, well, what's the point? I'm just going to get banned off it as soon as I say something interesting. So I didn't use it that much. But maybe it really was the case that he was hemmed in by three-letter agencies and the courts and all the rest of it that were forcing him to do that stuff against his will. And now Elon Musk has sort of just come out and blatantly saying it. I mean, yes, in the context of Brazil in this case, but I mean, as you pointed out, the Twitter files released the information, which no mainstream journalist has gone anywhere near. You're like this, Josh, because you make the point of just refusing point blank. That's what Rumble did.
Yes, well done, Rumble.
I feel bad for Rumble because none of us use it as much as we should. Like
We do upload everything to Rumble. You know, we've
Yeah, we
got
do.
a dedicated
we do.
following on there. I think.
Yes.
So
But-
we're doing our bit.
Yes. But I mean, it would just be so nice if there was some sort of sentient virus, computer virus that came along and just took out Google, because these
I'm
guys.
not sure you
really-
can say that.
No, I don't believe that. That'd be awful if that happened. But no, it just these guys are doing good work, and it's always so unfair that the monopoly position of the big G they get overlooked. But no, Rumble were very based on this, very based indeed. So they weren't doing it. Elon went a different route, and he just said, yeah, just if you're in Brazil, use a VPN.
It's good advice as well, I suppose.
Elon doesn't care. So he just went for this. And of course, the mainstream has kicked in their opinion as well. So the New York Times have gone with on this on Daft Morass. They ask, he is Brazil's defender of democracy. Is he actually good for democracy? The byline being, a Brazilian Supreme Court justice was crucial to Brazil's transfer of power. That's interesting. So are we suggesting that the transfer of power might not have happened? No, I'm not suggesting that. But his aggressive tactics are prompting debate. Can one go too far to fight the far right? Question mark. Quick note on journalism. Whenever a question ends with a question mark, the answer is no. As it is in this case. I mean, this is the kind of standard playbook, isn't it, that we've got now in the modern world, which is, one, you label people that you don't like as far right. Two, you ask yourself the question, what is it that you're not allowed to do when combating the far right? Three, the answer is nothing. There is nothing that you cannot do when combating the far right. Which is the situation we're in now. But where is this sort of sentiment coming from? Because it's actually really quite unusual for a large US corporation to get treated in this way. It doesn't often happen, and the reason that doesn't often happen is because normally the State Department is there to do its job and to intervene and protect the interests of large US businesses, and it's just interesting to note that sort of thing isn't happening on this occasion.
It's almost like right-wing populist leaders are upsetting a global order.
Oh yes, because but that seems to be a more recent thing, because when Twitter was under prior management, I seem to remember that Iran got some sanctions applied against it for putting the clamps on Twitter. But all of a sudden now, they are at a minimum stepping back. Let's see what the big guy has to say on the subject. Now, I will play you this video. I have to warn you that we try and maintain a certain pace in these segments. This chap is going to ruin my pacing. I promise I have not slowed him down. This is actually how he talks. So let's listen to the big guy.
On an unrelated note, donating money to dementia is a noble cause.
Yes.
Operation and/or
Endor, wasn't that a planet in the stars?
technical relationships with other countries is worthy of being looked at. Whether or not he is doing anything inappropriate, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that worth being looked at. But that's all I'll say. There's a lot of ways. All right. I think that
Yes.
That was a point well made there.
Elon Musk.
He won't shut up though.
Stop talking, old man.
There you go. Oh no, there we go.
There we go. Right, there we go. Just on a side note, I just feel bad for this guy.
What, Joe Biden?
Well, I mean,
Them rot.
he should be in a home. He should be getting a little blanket draped across his knees and staring out the window or something.
I have a strange urge to have a nap and a throat sweet
Yeah.
after watching that. I don't know why.
But yeah, so there's Biden doing his thing. Elon, his relationship with other countries needs to be looked at, which is strangely reminiscent of his call a little while ago, previous to this, where he said that Elon's relationship with regulatory agencies need to be looked at, and then something like several dozen federal agencies then started investigating Elon on sort of frivolous grounds across his various businesses. And here's Biden saying that, oh look, wouldn't it be handy if some foreign entity were to pick a fight with Elon? Now we know that the three-letter agency, the deep state in the US, is sort of balls deep in South America. It has been for many years, and that is very well documented with declassified documents and autobiographies and all the rest of it that we've had out of that.
That's so uncontroversial that even socialist Noam Chomsky wrote an entire book about it, didn't he?
Well, yeah, yes. Case in point. But I'm just looking at this. We know that the deep state of which this man is a representative doesn't like Elon. They've got their hooks well and truly in all across South America. The State Department is not playing its usual role. Is it possible that this is perhaps some sort of test ground? Because the Twitter is a problem for these guys, but the First Amendment is also a problem. But what if you can find some sort of some sort of way round that? And also, it throws up some other interesting questions. This Morass chap, he started criminal investigations into Elon Musk. What happens if he issues an arrest warrant? Would the US extradite him? Would they go that far?
That would be very controversial, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder whether they would do it. I mean,
But
only time will
I
tell.
bet somebody in the White House has had a meeting about whether they could get away with it. So there is that. Final note I'll close on. Just thought it's a little bit interesting that Facebook has never come under censure anywhere in the world, as far as I'm aware.
I'm
Wonder why
pretty
that is.
sure the only time it has been partially censored was some of the Arab Springs, maybe. I think there was brief shutdowns, but also a lot of the things were organized on it. That's if I'm remembering rightly. It's obviously been a long time. It's been over 10 years, I think.
Yeah. But interesting that the social media companies run by a left-leaning Democrat just doesn't have these issues. But one run by basically an old-fashioned Democrat centrist has. So that is interesting. Anyway, I'm sure it's nothing. But something slightly suspicious is going on in Brazil.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this episode on Ruby Ridge. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.